Hi everyone and welcome to our monthly webinar. Our focus today is how to prepare yourself for the end of support for Windows 10 and how can Intune help you out. I'm Andreas Khalil. I'm the Partner Program Manager at MP Solution. I will be your moderator for today. Before I hand you to today's presenters, I would like to mention our rules of engagement for this webinar. This webinar is recorded and will be available on demand. Please reach out to your partner or direct member on the team for access. Also, leverage the Q&A feature on the top of your toolbar for any questions you might have. We will answer them at the end of the webinar. Our featured speakers for today's webinar are Joseph Kalaf, the President of MP Solution, and Eli Karkafi, the Microsoft MVP and Solution Architect in our team. Joe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andreas. I appreciate it. Let me share my screen and kick off the presentation.
I can see it.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it. So for today, the topic is obviously Microsoft Intune mainly, but the motivation behind this webinar is truly Windows 10. The motivation is to help our partners and customers get ready for Windows 11 and to upgrade from Windows 10. The reason this is critical, I'm going to highlight it here, is because October 14th of this year is end of support. That's 138 days from today, 97 working days. While that at face value might seem like quite a bit of time, we'll talk through why this is critical for obviously all of our customers and all of our partners to start thinking through. Windows 11 is a little more stringent when it comes to hardware requirements, as you can only imagine. Thus, for a lot of our customers that want to reuse some of their hardware, this has to be a very thoughtful exercise, and it's just not an exercise of purchasing new hardware, or even if they don't have the budgets for it. So obviously, why upgrade to Windows 11, right? So this is data that was this is actual data. 93% of ransomware targets Windows executables. The argument is going to be very simple here, which is, of course, because Windows is the largest workstation or client operating system out there. Absolutely true. Thus, ransomware is going to target Windows mainly. That's what's going to happen. Legacy Windows 10 systems face higher infection rates. Obviously, Windows 10, the reason for the higher infection rate could also be argued that Windows 10 is really the operating system that's most out in the marketplace. Very true. But the reason also is because what a lot of customers and partners don't understand is that a lot of hardware that still supports Windows 10 does not support the latest releases of Windows 10, does not support the latest patches of Windows 10. So if you're on older hardware still running Windows 10, you might not be running, you might not be on the latest and greatest Windows 10 release, and thus you are at a higher risk. With Windows 11 now, out in the marketplace for a while, and OEMs like the Dells and the HPs and the Lenovo's of the world shipping laptops and desktops with Windows 11, there is actually a 58 to 62% drop in successful attacks. And we'll get to that in a little bit and explain how Windows 10 is approaching that. And there's a 3x reduction in firmware attacks on Windows 11. And again, this goes back to the bullet point behind it. We'll talk about it in a little bit. It's literally a reduction in firmware attacks. Most customers don't necessarily think of Windows and firmware as being the same thing, and they're not. Firmware is really at the hardware layer. But how does Windows 10 prevent malicious actors from leveraging its kernel to get to the firmware of the device? So security enhancement in Windows 11. Let's talk through those quickly. Microsoft's put a lot of focus on Windows 11. Obviously, the UI's changed a little bit. They made it a little more end user friendly without giving you. I know a lot of people that love operating systems and love to hack and do stuff on the OS maybe don't really appreciate a lot of the things that have been hidden from the menus and the context menus. But for the end user, really, security was at the forefront of Windows 11. Uh, Credential Guard and Smart Screen, that's isolating secrets and phishing blocks on the operating system. TPM 2.0, right? It's security at the hardware level and boot integrity. So when you boot, you know you are not booting into anything malicious. Um, for BitLocker is a great example of TPM 2.0 requirements. Smart app control and driver block list. This is very important because in the past, a lot of people, including myself, would go and would search for a driver or would search for something and would be like, oh yeah, let me install that. Well, this is not as easy anymore. Windows 11 really understands what an untrusted app is and what a flawed driver is, and will stop you from, for lack of a better term here, shooting yourself in the foot, right? It'll keep you from doing that. And finally, this is actually an awesome feature. It's HVCI. This is hypervisor code isolation. It's it's sandbox detonation, meaning Windows 11 now has the capability of taking something, taking a malicious or what it thinks is a malicious, potentially executable or application, and detonating it inside the hypervisor model of the operating system so that if it is malicious, it's within the hypervisor, it's in an isolated environment, and then it'll just toss it out without allowing you to run it at the OS at the kernel level. So this is kernel protection that's very important, and it is definitely a very important feature that Microsoft has put a lot of effort into, and I believe it will definitely help with any exposure on the operating system level. Of course, all the rage is AI. I get it. And Windows 11 does actually incorporate a lot of AI for security. Smart App Control is an AI model to evaluate app trustworthiness. Um, Windows Copilot integration is built into the operating system. For those that are looking into or have already invested in Copilot and Microsoft 365. Adaptive performance, so AI-based threat detection and response tuning uses EDR based on AI, so it's always learning. And then phishing and fraud warnings with real-time analysis is also AI powered. So it's always learning and trying to identify phishing, trying to identify malicious URLs and just obfuscated and bad emails that will come through. Windows is able to detect them on the fly. So why upgrade to Windows 11? Well, the obvious was in slide number 2. Like, you really want to get there by October 14th. You really don't want to be on an operating system that is no longer getting security updates from Microsoft. It will be the targeting Windows 10 is going to go through the roof after October 14 because malicious actors are going to know if you're not upgrading. Well, and Microsoft isn't going to really put out security updates out there, so I'm going to attack you. You're on Windows 10. So you definitely want to get to Windows 11 because the obvious here, the support thing, significantly fewer incidents versus Windows 10. When I was building this, I kind of went and researched a little bit. And yes, it could be argued that Windows 10 potentially still has a larger footprint. But really, this number, when we talk about significantly fewer security incidents, it's really a percentage of the amount of operating system of the footprint out there, of how many OSs are in the wild. So really, Windows 11 in a 1-to-1 ratio is harder to attack than Windows 10. The built-in hardware and virtualization protections, HVCI, that I talked about, the AI-driven piece of it, and really it's seamless cloud management and zero trust readiness. It's ready to be a zero trust operating system, and it is built with heavy integration into what we're going to get to here in a little bit, which is Intune, which is cloud management and how do I manage it via Intune. So Intune integration. Obviously, Windows 11 came after Intune. So Intune had been out there baking for a long time, and when the Microsoft OS team started working on Windows 11, that was definitely top of mind. Security was top of mind, but management was top of mind also. How do I manage these devices using Intune? So the things that a lot of device manager admins love about this is one, there's conditional access with device health attestation, meaning access could actually be conditioned on how healthy is your device, and that is Windows 11 communicating the health back to Intune. Security baseline for consistent compliance. That's much easier with Windows 11. Endpoint privilege management, also a feature of Windows 11, meaning you give the user on the device least privileged access. You could push that down to the client piece. And then obviously we talked about this earlier, automated EDR workflows with Defender integration. That's all AI driven, but um, uh, Defender on there is integrated into the operating system. It learns using AI, and it's always up to date and just always working in the background with Intune and with a lot of the other Microsoft products that are out there to push malicious actors away from that endpoint. So Intune, the spirit of this webinar, really, we talk about Intune here and why. So Intune is the product that is the go-to for um, device management, whatever that device might be. This is our go-to, obviously, as a Microsoft partner, but we are really starting to see more and more partners and more customers starting to want to leverage Intune for the reasons that we will go through here. So how do we balance productivity with protection is really kind of the focus here, because that is the beauty of Intune. That is the beauty of the feature set that it provides. I want to be protected, but I don't want to be locked out either. I want to be able to work. So data. Consider the data that you are putting out there on your devices, and think of the volume of the information that you're putting out there. And then you start thinking about, how do I protect it using Intune, right? Uh, it's one thing to protect the device. Let's say it's stolen, I can wipe it. Great. It's lock it, fine. But the issue also is that device is hosting my data. My data is my corporate data, my intellectual property is sitting on this device. And how do I use Intune to ensure that that data is protected regardless of what happens to the device, stolen, whatever, right? So if you look at enterprise mobility management with Intune, you enable your users. Again, what we said is you don't want to lock them out. You don't want to tell your users, you can't open a document because I'm worried about my data. You want to enable your users, right? But you also want to protect your data. And this is where it meets in the middle. Intune is able to manage the device, but it's also able to manage the application that is consuming that data, whether it's Outlook, whether it's Word, whether it's Adobe, whatever that, like Acrobat, whatever that might be, right? So it is able to direct the workflow of that data that's coming from, let's say, your cloud infrastructure, your cloud SaaS applications, down to the device, to protect the device and protect the data in isolation on that device. So what was the vision here of Intune is really a unified product that controls access across the broad spectrum, across the whole ecosystem of users, devices, data. It's iOS, it's Android, it's Mac OS, it's Windows, and it's all the data that's flowing down there into these devices, and it's all the users that are on these devices that are actually using these devices to do their daily work. And I would like to point out on bullet point number 2 here, and we'll get to this in a little bit. Protecting your data when it gets to the device is one thing. Protecting your data after the user accesses it is another. And this is what I like to refer to a lot of times as insider risk, meaning, okay, yes, uh, you only Andreas can access the file. Great, you're protecting access to the data, but how do I ensure that Andreas, for example, when he gets access to the data, he does not go do something malicious with that data? So what also Intune gives us is actually access to data based on real-time context, meaning this is the beauty of Intune as a cloud platform, meaning I am always paying attention. The platform, when I say I guess I is an Intune, the platform is always paying attention to the dynamic reality of users and devices. Where are devices going? Where are users going? And you create conditional access based on that real time. One of the things that comes to mind at first is, for example, conditional access policies. If I am in Virginia, or if I am in California, or if I am outside the country, or if I am internationally traveling in one country versus the other, or if I'm coming from a different IP in a mobile world, it can't be, you cannot be so rigid. You have to have that real-time access. Where are the users? Where are the devices? And control that access based on the movement of today's workforce and today's data. Risk-based conditional access. That's another great thing about Intune. What does that mean? It means Intune can also create access policies based on risk scores, based on, hey, look, this doesn't look right. And a lot of the stuff Microsoft is doing actually using AI, but it's learning to identify, okay, did this user meet the condition? Yes, that's conditional access. Okay, but then is there a risk associated with that condition? Is it high? Is it medium? And you can make decisions based on that, right? You can make decisions based on, um, well, even though the user met the condition, but the risk is high, or maybe put them through a workflow that goes through multiple conditions. And that way you will actually block access to the data and block access to the devices from malicious actors or hackers that are trying to get on there. So this is what I wanted to cover a little earlier. Control, and this is not specifically Intune, as I mentioned down here, it would require either a third party or an optional feature. But the point I'm trying to make is that Intune is going to facilitate that. Without Intune, it's very difficult to push that, which is, how do I control what happens to my data after it's accessed, after my users read it? What can they do with it other than read it, see it, and act if there are action items? And this is where app encryption becomes important. This is where, as a Microsoft partner, what we're doing actually is we push, for example, AIP, Azure Information Protection, through Intune, right, to these devices, so that a Word document, for example, that is opened in Word on an Android or an iOS device is open, but that intellectual property, that content inside that document, cannot be taken out of that document, cannot be taken anywhere, cannot be printed, cannot be copied, cannot be pasted. You can't do anything with it. You can't take a screenshot of it, right? This is how you protect your data after it's accessed. And with the help of a couple of other technologies, it's Intune that is required to push that to your um, cloud ecosystem and push it down to your devices. Um, and then finally, really, the reason why we're getting a lot of Intune today is because it's modern PC management. It's really going from the good old, for those IT admins that are listening today or that'll be watching this in the future. It's literally going from your traditional SCCM and group policies and AD over to a more modern Intune Azure AD AIP infrastructure that is cloud based and that simplifies and continues to innovate with modern technologies. So as far as the Office desktop clients are concerned, I'm not sure what to say about this other than you can only imagine. This is all part of the Microsoft ecosystem, and they work very well together, right? The Office apps still operate the same way. They get pushed into Intune. A lot of our customers are requesting what we call the company portal, for example, where we actually deploy these applications or decide which applications to deploy to these mobile devices using the company portal, of which, as mentioned here, the Office applications are, the default baseline usually for what all of our customers ask for, and third-party applications too, but mainly that's what you get when you push it down. That's what they ask for. Protect with or without enrollment. The reason I bring this up simply because I know a lot of sometimes customers, and this might come up in a Q&A later, customers always ask us, help me with my BYOD policy, bring your own device. You could still implement a BYOD policy thoughtfully with Intune and continue to be protected, right? You don't have to limit or stop the BYOD practice. So with that enrollment, you could still protect your data and protect your devices. And finally, the beauty of this product is that it's immediate, right? You're not spending any time doing anything other than you're leveraging existing cloud infrastructure. There's a lot of flexibility in how you manage your mobile ecosystem, and it does have a lot of there's a huge ISV marketplace presence out there for third-party products that enhance upon certain things that Microsoft maybe doesn't do very well or hasn't really invested in. If you want to advance the management of Mac OSs, for example, there are third-party products out there that do a little bit better of a job that are simply focused on the Mac OS. That's the beauty of a marketplace. And then finally, it gives you the flexibility in a complex device ecosystem. You want it to be company managed, it's employee managed, or maybe it's third party managed. You get to pick and choose any of those. And with that, I will hand it back to you, Andreas.
Awesome. Thank you for the presentation, Joe. Let me bring Lee with us on the screen, and thank you both for joining us today. Before we jump on for our attendees' questions, there's a question of my own. And I would like to also state that it just feels like when Windows 7 got out of support and we were all pushing for Windows 10 and the whole pushback that we got. So it feels like the good old days where we all loved Windows 7, didn't want to get out of it, but that's Microsoft basically.
Yeah, go ahead.
In today's world, post the coronavirus pandemic, work from home and bring your own device has been a go-to for multiple companies. How does the end of support of Windows 10 affect those people, and how can Intune support the transition to Windows 11?
So, I mean, I could probably let Elise speak to this a little bit, but I'm going to give you my experience a little bit because I was at Microsoft during the Windows 7 to Windows 10 transition. I worked at Microsoft. I was there for 17 years. And let me tell you, outside of Intune, the complexity and difficulty of going to Windows 11, it is an attestation and a testament to how well liked Windows 10 is. It's the reason people struggled to go to Windows 8 is because Windows 7 people loved Windows 7 and didn't like Windows 8. But even before they looked at Windows 8, they loved Windows 7. And they're like, this is such a great OS. It was the same experience between Windows XP. A lot of customers skipped Windows XP. Now I'm showing my age and went to Windows 7 and skipped Vista. This is the struggle with Windows 10 to Windows 11. Windows 10 is a loved product, but love should not translate to a security, right? To compromise. So Windows 11 is a great product, and Intune is the product to actually use, especially in a corporate world, to push Windows 11 to your end users, regardless of how much they love Windows 10. Right? You have to get it out there. You cannot put it at risk in a world where security is of the utmost importance.
How can Intune accommodate those bring your own device that the employee owns in a way to integrate with the work environment that we're seeing in the market?
Yeah, let me take this one, Joe, please. So before talking about how Intune supports the transition to Windows 11, I would like also to mention and speak about the impact of Windows 10 end of support, especially for the remote workers. Um, so when the Windows 10 comes to end of support, automatically Microsoft will stop supporting those devices by like releasing new security updates, and that will leave the device more vulnerable to new threats in that case. And that will become more concerning for the remote workers who rely on a secure access to corporate resources while working from home. So that's one. Two, it will be a compliance issues because of unsupported operating system, and that can lead to a non-compliance status for their devices, um, comparing to the industry regulations, let's say. And that is very critical, especially for the businesses in the sector of healthcare or finance, for example. And the second impact, which is a big impact, especially with the businesses that they have their own applications that are developed in-house, the software compatibility, which means some software and application may not be compatible with Windows 10 in the future. Now for the second part of the question, how Intune can support the transition to Windows 11. One of them is the automation of the upgrade process. For example, Intune have a capability called Windows Autopilot, which allow you to automate the provisioning of the operating system with the application, with the configuration policy, with the security policy, with a zero-touch deployment process. And also, Intune provides a robust capability for the BYOD devices, which is the bring your own devices where you can control. And as Joe mentioned before, even your personal devices is not enrolled in Intune. You can control what the user can do with that, with this data available on their personal um, devices. Also, Intune can facilitate the training and support of the transition and during the transition of from Windows 10 to Windows 11. Thank you.
I know we're coming on time, but I would like to also dive a little bit deeper into the last question. You
Yes.
said that Intune supports the transition of legacy applications or the old applications of Windows 10. As a Microsoft professional services company, where does our intervention comes in? Where can we support our clients in that transition? Do we support them in the app itself, or do we support them on the connection between the app and Windows 11 that we need to establish again?
Yeah, we support them in both at
Mhm.
the same level. So if the app is not compatible anymore with Windows 10, we work on them to make it compatible with Windows 11. That's first. Also, we help them to package that app and being deployed through Intune on all the devices through an automated process instead of installing it on a single device. And also, we work with them on automating the whole process of provisioning Windows 11 by making sure that during the provisioning of the operating system, all the line of business app that a user need on his daily based operation will be included within the same process. So provisioning a Windows device now, it will take 10 minutes, including all the script, all the security policies, all the application, and the user can start his business within like 30 minutes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. I believe that's all the questions we have for today. I would like to share our upcoming monthly webinars for the next 3 months. I know we pushed that just because we got so many questions about Intune and we wanted to prioritize this webinar specifically. So we pushed everything a month. And by clicking on the hyperlink over the PowerPoint, you can go to the registration page to directly register for our security webinars. So I'll give you a second just if you want to access them. In the meantime, there's one more question that I have. What are the potential challenges and solutions for integrating third-party security tools and Microsoft Intune with Microsoft Intune during the transition from Windows 10 to Windows 11?
Yeah, I will take this one also. So there is many challenges, but the big challenge is the compatibility issues. So not all the third-party security tools are fully compatible with Windows 11, leading to a functionality issues or system instabilities. So for me, it's always before buying any third-party product to ensure that this party tool are updated to the latest version and is compatible with Windows 11. But for sure, leveraging the security product or the security stacks provided by Microsoft have more advantages always, and is more aware of any compatibility issues. The second challenge would be, for example, the driver and the kernel mode conflicts, let's say, because most of the security products use what we call kernel mode driver, which can conflict with Windows 11. And I saw while working with many clients that, for example, they have an old hardware that are not ready to be upgraded to Windows 11, and always we advise them to always make sure that they are using hardwares with the latest kernel mode drivers. First for security, second for compatibility. Last but not least, for the policy and configuration management, also with the new, let's say, Intune, which is the modern device management solution, not all the security feature and policies are compatible with Windows 10, but transitioning to Windows 11 will make it more reliable when it comes applying security feature on them.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Eli and Joe, for the wonderful presentation. Have a good one, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.